Hello, everyone. Welcome to California. Thank you, Jerome, for having me, and thank you to the coffee guys as well for giving me the energy to be here today. I said I'd give them a shout out, so there you go, guys. But yeah, welcome. My name's Chris, and I work for a company called Midia Research. And a lot of what we do, if you're not familiar with Midia, is we're not just a lot of data that we collect from consumers and artists and people in the music industry all over the world. We do a lot of work, particularly myself, on the consulting side, where we really work with companies in the music industry, from streaming services to music production companies to labels, all throughout the value chain, really working with their teams directly to make an impact with the problems and challenges they have. And so what you're seeing here is a lot of the research that we put out on our platform and that you might see in our blogs and stuff. But so much of it has been informed by the work that we do behind the scenes, working with these companies directly. And so without further ado, we're here to talk about the social music industry and the future of music going forward. And so, just in case some of you do need to check out or need to close your eyes for a minute after last night, I'm just going to go through everything that we're going to cover right now. And so hopefully this will give you a view of what we're going to be talking about. So first of all, social music creators are growing faster than any other segment in the music industry in the creator side. And we will get into the sort of creator bases in a minute as well, so you can understand what we mean by social music creators. And we're also seeing more consumers and music fans engaging in creative behaviors too. So the result of this means that platforms built for music creation and platforms built for social media are starting to converge. And we've seen that with the latest TikTok announcement for Ripple as well, building out creator tools and more music-focused creative activities, even just this past week. And so we really believe that the future growth of the industry is going to be at this intersection of music and social, and we're really going to get into what that means and what the implications of that are. And a lot of it is tied to future models built around scenes, fandom, creation, and again, we'll really dive into what we mean by that. And a bit of context that's underpinning all of this is that streaming is slowing down. The growth of streaming is not going to be over the next decade what it was over the previous decade. And so there is a real need to get into future growth drivers. And for all the people working in the industry, all the artists in the industry, there's a real obligation for everyone to start looking at how can we ensure that this industry continues to grow, because we've all seen it go the other direction, and it's not the best of times. So this is where we're at right now. And like I said, social music and cross-entertainment is really going to be a driver of this. And of course, when we talk about social music, there's always this notion of, viral TikToks and, artists kind of breaking through just out of nowhere. But there is more to music than just virality, and we really want to emphasize that when we talk about social music. And again, I'm going to say it twice because it's important. These future models are built around fandom, they're built around creation, and they're built around identity. So yeah, if you're very hungover, you can check out now. But again, encourage you all to stay. And this is what we're going to talk about. So starting off with the music creator economy. So what we have here at Midia and what we do is we essentially map out the installed bases of music creators. And we go from this big picture of those that play or want to learn to play an instrument and those that play an instrument. So you're looking at roughly 500 million people in the world that are, let's just say, musically inclined and musically orientated. Within that, we've then got around 60 million who are producing or recording music as well. And right there as well, the 6 million who are releasing onto streaming. And so when we talk about these hundreds of thousands of tracks, every day, every week getting uploaded onto streaming, it's just that 6 million. That's just, barely a % of the overall population of those who have the potential to make music and release music. But what's really interesting that we found over the past couple of years is this little bubble right here of those who are uploading or releasing their music online. So they're not going all the way to streaming. They're just sharing it on platforms like SoundCloud, they're sharing it on TikTok, they're sharing it on Instagram, even just throwing it around in a Discord server. And we found that since we've been able to track this, this is the fastest growing segment. 30% it grew from 2020 to 21. And you might be wondering, we're in 2023, why are we talking about 2021? And it's because these numbers take a whole year for us to put together, because it goes through getting company financials in the creator space, it goes through speaking to retailers about their previous year's numbers, and we will have the updated figures in Q3 this year for 2022, and we expect this uploading and releasing segment, what we call the social music creator, to really keep growing and keep exploding. But to give you something that's a bit more fresh, this is one of our latest creator surveys that we've done. So when we look at artists who are self-releasing, we're only seeing about, just under 1 million that are doing it full-time. About 2.5 million that are very passionate and want to do it full-time. But then you've got the same number, roughly, who are passionate about music, but they're not expecting to do this as a full-time thing. So you've got the people in that 2.4 million who are essentially grinding out for a career as artists. But you've got just as many who are happy for it to be a side hustle and just looking for it to be something they do on the side. And we don't want to confuse this with hobbyists, because there are people who have no financial expectation. It is just purely for enjoyment. And that is a separate thing from this segment, who really care about making music, like sharing music, but aren't really expecting to make a career out of it. And one thing that we found as well, it's about 5% who used to be full-time artists. And this is something we're going to keep an eye on over the next year, because with the amount of artists and the increasing competitiveness of being an artist, there's a real chance that this might grow and we see more artists churn in the music industry. People who might have been able to have a window as full-time artists and then, for whatever reason, might not be able to anymore. And so, going on to the consumer side, we all know about this notion of lean-back entertainment, so people who are just listening to radio, just scrolling through social media. It's very much letting the entertainment come to you. And then you've got consumers who are leaning in, so they're getting more involved in platforms, they're actively inputting into the platform, creating content, engaging, making playlists. But over the past couple of years, we've found this new segment, which we call Lean Through. And this is the consumer who is not just satisfied with sitting back, not just satisfied with essentially uploading or sharing. They want to recreate, they want to do TikTok duets, they want to curate visual content, they want to react to videos, they want to, take posts and do something different with them. So almost like a kind of remix culture that we're seeing in the consumer side. And if you think, but that's only 5% of people who are, recreating. Well, that's roughly the same amount of people in the consumer base that are making music right now as well. And so we're seeing consumers being creative, engaging in these kinds of cultures at the same level that we're seeing people make music as well. And so what we find is this shift that goes from artists to music creators, where we all have this notion of artists as people who make music, they put it out, they release it, they get it on the streaming platforms. But the modern music creator is not really as fussed about that kind of model. It's much more about making content to drive engagement. So it's not about funneling people to listen to music, it's about building a brand, and it's about driving engagement, having an audience, and using music to drive that. And so I really want everyone to kind of get that sort of lens through their minds when we're thinking about creators as well. Because it's not just artists that can participate in this. It's instrumentalists, singers, producers, all these people who can essentially just use their talent to find a community, whether that's a bassist finding a community of other bass guitarists through, base-face content, for instance, things like that. It opens up the door for so many more people to get involved and create potential careers. And so we're going to talk a bit more about platforms now, because they're obviously very important in this story. And so at Midia, every quarter we survey about 9,000 people across all of these markets down here. And we look at entertainment behaviors across music, video, social, gaming, and we look at platform usage as well. And so within this, we have built out this segment called the music aficionados. And these are essentially basically the top 10% of music consumers, the people who are spending the most time and money on music. And we find that they use these platforms at a much higher rate than the average consumer does. And it's not just that, it's the people who use these platforms on social media who are actually streaming music more than the average consumer too. So if you look at 5.5 hours a week is what the average consumer spends on listening to music, 8.8 for Snapchat, 7.7 TikTok, Twitter, Instagram Reels, Shorts, 7.4, and I'm sure you can see the theme here about how these short-form content platforms are really capturing music fans and driving music consumption at a much higher rate. Obviously, Twitter is a bit of an anomaly there. Personally, I think that's all you lot and all the music tech community listening to music there. So, but ultimately, yeah, this kind of short-form social content is really driving music consumption and music fandom. And with that, we see music discovery changing. So for younger generations, discovering music is much more about social media. It's about viral trends. And it's not just about younger audiences discovering music. It's about buying music as well. Obviously, 15% there for the 16 to 19-year-olds, but that's because most people in the US, and bear in mind, this is a US consumer chart as well. These aren't people who are necessarily actively involved in live music yet, but they're going to be. And we're seeing that this generation that has just started getting into live music are buying tickets because of social media at a much higher rate than previous age groups as well. And so we get this tipping point where obviously music is important to social, social is important to music, and so we're seeing the music tools becoming more social, the social tools becoming more musical, and we're getting this convergence happening. And so the implications of that are really about what's next, what does that mean? And for us, it's all about scenes and fandom, because we can't be building an industry based on virality for the long term. It's just not sustainable for artists. We've seen labels talk to us and say, building hits out of viral moments, there's no, marketing agencies as well, there's no real science behind it. There's no real way to really carve out longevity for these artists. So what does longevity look like in a social music industry? And so we're starting here with the people driving the virality, the people who are sharing music. And what we found quite significant is that the majority of them, 3/4 of them, are researching the artists they discover. They care about who these artists are. And that is really fundamental, because you might think so many consumers, and we see it in our data as well, so many consumers might hear something on, a viral like TikTok moment, or hear something on Instagram, and they don't really know who the artist is. But it's the people who are driving this virality. They care. It really matters to them who that artist is. And with that comes the identity of the artist. And so what do we mean by identity? What do we mean by scenes? It all starts with values. So it all starts with the beliefs that the artist has and what they represent. Rituals, so we're talking about patterns of behavior that artists embody. Icons, there's always icons within a scene. You look at throughout history, you can name countless icons across lots of different scenes in music. And then symbols that really represent that scene. And that's the merch moneymaker right there. And I'd love to take credit for this, but this was done by a social anthropologist called Hofstede. And it's called the cultural onion. It's a beautiful thing, I think. And whilst it's great having all of these things, you can't pull it off without this part, the practice, because it's not enough for artists or labels to say who their artist is, or talk about it, or write about it. You have to live it, you have to believe it, and you have to really practice these things in order to express identity and to allow consumers to understand and believe in your own identity as well. And with that comes the economies of scenes and fandom. So pretty much everything from creator side starts with this, the creator-to-creator economy. And that's all about context, collaboration. It's giving people a reason to give a damn about you, because there are so many creators right now. Most music is just being released into a void. When you connect with other creators that already have an audience, suddenly their fans are exposed to you, and you have a point of interest and a point of difference. On the fandom side, we've got this creator-to-fan economy. And this is where I'd say the majority of the music industry is focused on right now. It's just making music, making content, getting it out, finding fans. But if you don't have any context and you don't have any reason for a fan to listen to you, it's a real fruitless task. But when you do have that context and you are making great music and you are getting it out to fans, the fans will give back. We've seen that in our research. We've done projects with clients as well where we've been interviewing superfans, and fans want to give. Fans want to really, if they can't give money, they want to share, they want to support, they want to advocate for artists that they love and that they identify with. And when you get that rolling, you get this fan-to-fan economy, and that's where things really start to fly, and that's how a scene really starts to proliferate, because you get fans talking to each other, you get fans supporting one another, you get fans supporting the artist, having conversations about the artist, having debates about the artist. And within that fan-to-fan economy emerges the next generation of creators, because you'll see so many artists, so many producers say, why did you get involved into music? Well, it's because they loved a particular artist. Always remember Pharrell talking about how much he loved Tribe Called Quest, how he was in this fan-to-fan community built around following Tribe Called Quest, following these artists that he really loved. And that's what inspired him to start making music and collaborating. And the more you get this flywheel going, the bigger the scene and the bigger lasting impact you will have in music. And so, what are your options then? We have this song economy, which is make music, put it out, feed the algorithm, and it's really not something which we're seeing build lasting and meaningful relationships. And you may have been on seen one of the panels yesterday with the artist that was sitting here saying to us that, these algorithms only like 2 styles of hip hop, and it sucks because all of these artists are just making the same thing, because it's all about feeding the algorithm and it's all about getting to the listener, and that's all that matters. And is that really the industry we want going forward? Or do we want a model where we get that flywheel going and we create icons and we build scenes and we forge emotional connections and we start building identity across artists, and we make music mean more than just something that sits in the background? And so, just to wrap up with the future of this industry and why this is all important. So we put out forecasts every year of the global music market, and this right now goes up to 2030. And this is something that we've been doing for a long time, and we work with a lot of investors and a lot of clients who use these models to make decisions about how do we invest in music, what is the future of music, what do we need to do to help ensure that this industry grows. And right now we're seeing streaming slow down, and particularly, on the subscription ad supported, it's the revenue growth is not going to be as significant as it has been. So we need more. And what we find is that we have creation and distribution and consumption platforms that are really building it all into one, that are allowing creators and fans to really get involved, get their music out, get audiences to engage with it, and, like I said, create more creative consumers. And we've seen some of this stuff, for instance, on TikTok, flow out of the system, you know, with their distribution arm with Sound On, taking that music to Spotify. But why should it? It's why there is all this talk around TikTok music, because when you capture all of this in one place, you get platforms that are built around certain musical cultures, and you look at it on TikTok and the music culture on TikTok, you look at it on places like SoundCloud and the music culture on SoundCloud, they're completely different. And so this is where we're seeing the next generation of platforms that are really creating this cycle of creation and consumption. And so this will change the way that artists make money. The most important bit, of course. And this current artist model is all built around funneling fans to streaming. It's all around making people listen to your music. And that's not really working for a lot of artists out there right now. So instead, we look at this portfolio of income that artists can build, and particularly on these platforms that enable them to build these portfolios of income. And that's really where the future of the music business lies. It's on these platforms that enable artists to really build holistic careers that aren't just about making people listen to your music, but it's about building your brand. It's about building audiences across all of these things that will enable you to make a sustainable living. And so, just to wrap up, we've got music creation on one side, where we've got all these different ways in the future that people are going to be making music. So whether that's AI sound generation, beat makers, just ways that music can be generated on the creator side. And that's very much a creator tools industry kind of play. That's where the creator tools side is going to really start making their money going forward. On the other side, you've got this recreation aspect. So sampling, stems, remixing, artist vocals as well. This is the music industry opportunity because this is rights holder based. It's about taking existing IP, flipping it, and turning it into something new, allowing consumers to do that, giving consumers the tools to do that, and allowing artists to make money doing that as well. But there's this beautiful middle ground emerging where there's new ways of listening and creating and engaging music and new formats that are arising right now. And you look at something like the Grimes AI, for instance, where you've got this really strong original music creation aspect, but you've also got this licensing opportunity as well to enable an artist's voice to be able to be used by an original creator. And that is the exciting space going forward. And this is the new top of funnel for the music industry. This is where everything will begin on the creator side, allowing consumers to be social, allowing creators to share their music, and that's where we believe the future of this social music industry will be going. So thank you very much. My name's Chris. I'm at Midia Research, as you know, and yeah, please get in touch. Please feel free to come up to me and ask any questions. And yeah, we love data, but we love having good conversation more than that as well. So yeah, thank you very much. Thanks again, Jerome, and yeah, great to be here.